Now we have a distinguished panel of speakers. If I can have everyone's attention, please, that would be lovely because I'd like to begin by introducing our eminent speakers. Speaker is Mr. Murali Krishnan B, the Country Manager for eBay. I'd request Mr. Murali Krishnan to please make his way up onto the dais. As he does that, I will tell you a bit about him. He is a 37-year-old country manager of eBay India and is responsible for leading the eBay business in India, besides being an active evangelist of e-commerce's transformational potential for both Indian online shoppers and entrepreneurs. Murali has also been instrumental in leading eBay India's foray into mobile commerce. It's a pleasure to have you here with us, sir. We welcome you. Our next speaker is Mr. Asif Merchant, the Director of Catwalk. Sir, if you can please make your way up onto the dais. As he does so, I'll tell you a bit about him. He's the Managing Director of Catwalk. Great. So you know what we'll do? I'll introduce them as they make their way up, and then we can give them a round of applause just so you can hear about them, and then we can all together welcome him. So Asif Merchant is the Managing Director of Catwalk Worldwide since its inception. With the focus on product design and development, he anchors retail and strategic planning for the business. With over 30 years of experience in Indian footwear industry, he governs designing, developing, and implementing of all strategic plans for their organization. We welcome you, sir. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. Now's a good time. All right, our third speaker is Mr. Parimal Pandey, the Head of Network Business, APJ Akamai. If, sir, you can make your way up onto the dais, that'd be great. He's responsible for the network business for Akamai in the APJ region. Prior to this, he used to run the Emerging Customers Group at Akamai, where he was responsible for sales, marketing, and services for global mid-market customers. Previously, he helped start Akamai's application acceleration business and led project management, business strategy, and operations. He's also co-founded 2 startups in consumer media software and e-commerce sectors in New York City. It's a pleasure to have you here with us, sir, and together we'll welcome you. Our fourth speaker is Mr. Vivek Biani, the Director of the Future Group. So, sir, if you can please make your way up onto the dais. And as he does so, Mr. Biani joined Future Group in June 2007 and currently serves in an executive capacity as director in key group subsidiaries of Future Group. Since joining the group, Vivek has been involved in setting up of the group's home and consumer electronics business that includes Hometown, a large format home products and service retailing chain, eZone, and which is the group's electronics retailing chain, among other formats. As a member of the leadership team in the home business, Vivek also leads the operations, category management, and logistics for the retail formats. Welcome, Vivek. It's a pleasure to have you here. Our fifth speaker is Shivanandan Pare, the e-commerce head of Madhura Fashion and Lifestyle, and Aditya Birla Nouveau. Thank you, sir, for coming on up. Prior to his current position, he was the COO of BigAdda.com, driving the operations. He was instrumental in transforming the company into a full-fledged e-commerce destination. As a part of the president's team at Reliance Entertainment, he also actively drove the group's foray into media and entertainment industry. He was instrumental in the overall bidding for radio licenses, entry into broadcasting, online gaming, movie rental, social networking, and cinema. He also led and managed the acquisition of the animation business for Reliance Entertainment. Welcome, sir. It's a pleasure to have you here. Our sixth speaker is Mr. Sridhar Harihara Subramaniam. Sorry, sir. He's with IBM. And Sridhar is a smarter commerce leader for IBM India, responsible for, I think we have a place right over here, responsible for driving strategic business development activities and growing the smarter commerce solution business, which spans marketing, sales, to supply chain, and procurement functions. His domain expertise are in the area of customer experience management, cross-channel commerce, digital marketing, and web analytics. He works in an advisory role with many of India's senior execs, from multiple industry vehicles such as retail, consumer brands, telecom, and financial service. Thank you, sir, for joining us today. And now I'd like to introduce you to the moderator of our session, Mr. Kumar Rajgopalan, the CEO of RAI, R-A-I. And thank you, sir, for coming on up. He's currently working as a CEO of Retailers Association of India, the acronym RAI, which is the unified voice of retailers in India. RAI works with all stakeholders for creating the right environment for growth of the retail industry in India, and it's also the body that encourages, develops, facilitates, and supports retailers to become modern and adopt the best practices that will delight customers. Thank you, sir, for joining us, and we welcome you. And I shall now hand over this session to you. I believe it's a shorter session of 35 minutes, is what I was told. So I'll hand over the session to you now, sir.
Am I audible to everybody? Not yet. Okay, it's getting better. So thank you for those long introductions. It's been onto the stage, but I'm told that it is now commerce at the speed of thought, and time is now reduced. It's reduced quite a bit because it's now 35 minutes left, and I've got to give 10 minutes for. So keep your questions also ready in your minds. I've got 20 minutes to discuss now. 5 minutes we'll see what to do with. So with that in mind, thank you for coming in. I think the panelists have had some kind of a discussion before we came in here. So I've got the preview session which we got earlier. And one of the questions that comes up in mind, especially for the four gentlemen on this side, actually sitting here, are four people who've had successful offline businesses who are also online. Of course, other than for Murli is predominantly online, only online. So with that in mind, can I request from Asif Bhai, what made you go online, or do you think it's really useful at all since you've been successful offline?
I think first I'd like to tell you that online business is all about innovations. What we have done very successfully is we have innovated the business. Footwear is, somebody in the morning was talking very correct, that footwear is very, very difficult business to do it online because nobody buys it without the look feel of the product. So we went ahead, we planned everything well in advance. We got the products standardized in such a manner that we keeping the online business in mind. Because standardization of the product was very important. What was size 37 in UK needs to be the same 37 in India. So on and so forth. We then later on innovated, like we also learned from our offline, with our offline experience from stores, what kind of services or what kind of expectations people build when they want to buy footwear. So keeping those things in mind, we integrated a lot of technology to make the business very, very successful. And today, by God's grace, 10% of our top line, our net revenue comes from online business.
So why did you go online?
It was like catching the bus, and I'd like to know someone who doesn't want to do online. Online is the future. It's the most futuristic thing. And I won't be too surprised if this 10% next year becomes 15% or 17%. The rate what it is going on is phenomenal. Means you need to see it to believe it what I'm talking about.
Okay. So we'll come to Murli later on. We'll first ask Shiva. Shiva, what's your company's thoughts around going online? And you've come in from an online business background, but the company that you're currently in has been predominantly an offline player.
So, primarily there are two things. As brand custodians, we are custodians to few of the largest formal brands in this country. Louis Philippe, Van Heusen, Allen Solly, Peter England. Hello, can you hear me? That we said, where are our consumers going? So these consumers.
Not us.
So for us, online becomes very, very important because we have to be there wherever consumers are going, right? Second point is, there is only so many markets we can roll out from a physical perspective, right? We have a retail format which has its own EBO stores, exclusive brand stores, plus we retail through departmental and trade. But our EBO has a limitation in terms of economically viably going to tier 4, tier 3 markets. So these are two main reasons for us to look into online. We started transacting on putting our brands online through our partners over 6 months back, and now we are seriously looking at bringing out our own e-commerce channel.
Vivek, would you like to talk about the journey that Future Bazaar has had? Because I think it's gone through two kinds of journey. Initially as a pure online player, online player, and subsequently now as an integrated player. So what's the thought?
So I think, for us as Future Group, we are part of the consumption cosmos of India and, truly believers in the consumption story that India will evolve into, over the next decade and a half. And, online is always going to be an important channel of consumption. So, from that perspective, I think there is no question in our mind that, we have to be online. How we be online is something that's going to be a journey of evolution. So we started that sometime about end of 2007, early 2008. And the thought that time in our mind was that given the offline is growing, there's hyper growth happening in the offline format, and maybe online should be completely separate, so that we don't actually, no business is dependent on each other. So we went and started our journey as building a pure play e-commerce player through futurebazaar.com, different category team, different supply chain systems, etc. And what we realized over the next 2 to 3 years that it's a different business. It needs a culture which is extremely different. It needs capital investments at a different level. It needs process systems, very, very different from what a retail organization like ours was used to. And then we had two paths to really, pick from. Either you back the online business in a pure play manner with, the capital investment that it needs to compete successfully in the market, or really look at that you have a lot of assets on the physical retail side, whether it be brands, whether it be your supply chain systems, whether it be your products and merchandise spend that you have, and really look at how you can leverage that, in the online space as well. So I think very recently Future Bazaar has just shifted a little bit of its strategy towards really looking at what we have in the physical retail space and how do we look at building an omni-channel retail or a multi-channel retail strategy, leveraging those strengths here. So that's where we are right now.
So why would you shift from a place where you were having an online offering which had possibly a different kind of category, different kind of pricing, different experience altogether, to what it is that you're talking about today, which is to integrate your current play of your retail, which is offline, and to be able to now adopt one more channel as a method of selling? So why would that shift be?
One, because doing a pure play online is expensive. It requires a lot of capital investment. So at this point in time, we believe that the evolution on online commerce itself is so early that a lot of models will change. The business models will change, the customer behavior, the customer psyche will change, and you will require to invest that capital in that journey. We believe that in order to learn that, it's better that we leverage what we have in the offline space and learn that, and then really put out a serious effort in terms of what we'll do online. Yeah. So I believe that it's extremely early it's actually very early for physical retail also in India, but I think online is in its infancy. Of course, it's going to grow very fast, but I think the consumer behavior will change as, in the next 3 to 4 years. What that evolution will be, how the consumer behave, I think we'll all learn that. And, at that point in time, we'll really put out saying that this is the online strategy that we want to go after. Currently, what we want to do, though, is that there is a physical store customer that comes, and he will eventually go online, and we want to be present in that space as well.
Only you get a chance to advocate people to go online, considering the number of years of online play that the company as a whole has had and your own experience here in India. So what would be the reasons that you would give for offline doing well to go online first? And secondly, do you really see a difference between people who are going online after being in the play offline for a long time and the others whom you must be dealing with who are predominantly online players? So how do you look at this?
Cool. Let me start with a fairly sweeping statement which we truly believe in, and that is e-commerce in India today is mainstream. There are millions of Indians who are shopping online, but it is still a small fraction of the total number of Indian online users and an even smaller fraction of the total population. But it's well and truly mainstream, and that market is growing at close to 3-digit growth rates, right? Close to 100%, about 90 to 100% is its growth rate. But when I look at it from a retailer's perspective, the consumer today is far more informed. Information today is free. All you need to do is go to a search engine and you get information on all the products, all the prices, and so on. And people have these devices called smartphones, which is making information on products and prices and availability accessible at your fingertips anytime, anywhere, 24 by 7. And therefore, it no more is a question for an offline retailer as to why he needs to go online. My submission to offline retailers is, hey, presume that you have to go online because A, the consumer is there. The consumer is looking for you online. He's comparing you with your competitors online, and he's making a choice. And therefore, by not being present, you're missing out on a huge opportunity which is just beginning. We're just in chapter 1 of the online shopping story in India. There is a huge upside awaiting this entire industry. And there are so many more benefits. For example, the sheer intelligence that you get on consumer behavior, basis search patterns and so on and so forth, which actually helps you, A, manage your supply chain a lot better and could lead to a lot of intelligence in terms of building a relationship with your customer as opposed to just a transactional view. In many times, offline retailers are transactional transaction, right? I mean, you go, you pick up something, you pay, and you're out. And potentially the retailer might not be, unless he's got a loyalty program, actually be able to mine the intelligence in terms of predicting what else you might want and so on and so forth. All of that is actually possible online. And therefore, the potential in terms of building smarter, more scalable businesses for offline retailers online is enormous. And my only submission is, if you're sitting on the sidelines and wondering whether you need to do it, my submission is go ahead, make the leap, take the jump, and figure out how that works. You have partners who can help you do that.
Sridhar, you've had experience of working with IBM on global markets in various places. You've seen online retail, offline retailers taking shape. You're also seeing what's happening to India. I think Murli is talking about take the jump, take the leap. But obviously sometimes for offline retailers it's a worry because they've set up something which has been something that they've known of, they've strategized for, they've done a whole lot. While when it comes to online, there are things that's changing far too fast, one. And secondly, it's something that they're very new to and they're always worried about mera brand ka kya hoga. Okay. How do you look at this scenario from your thought process of IBM globally and what's happening to India per se? And what do you think should be done by retailers who are already well established offline?
Yeah, thanks, Kumar. Yeah, I think I would completely agree with my friend here, Murli, in terms of saying that I think online is going online is, I think, something that is inevitable, right? And even if somebody has apprehensions about actually doing transactions online, it doesn't mean that you should not be online. I think there are two different things. You know, somebody coming and buying something from you, paying through a credit card or whatever it is, and purchasing a product is one aspect of it. But there are a lot of other things that can happen online, and they are already happening, right? And this whole convergence of offline and online, you know, the whole physical and digital worlds is going to happen, is already happening in many places. And I'll just give you a simple example of, like he said, you know, being able to research on products, being able to compare products, being able to know the price of a product, being able to check the inventory status of a product, right? There are a lot of these things that you can do online and still be able to go into a physical store and buy the product, right? So my point is very simple. You know, if there are people who are extremely successful offline, I don't think you should look at online as something that's going to cannibalize your offline sales. I think it is really going to, I would say in my submission, is something that can only augment your offline channels. And ultimately, at the end of the day, looking at you know, these two as different channels also, I think is a wrong thing, which is something that, again, I've seen with many retailers, you know, in the last 4 or 5 years, is people trying to set up e-commerce as a separate business. It's got a separate P&L. We're going to hire somebody from the outside. I don't think that, you know, personally is the right way to do things, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, the brick and mortar channel is one way of you know, taking your products to your customers. Similarly, online is another channel. And I think that's what I think Vivek was also referring to ultimately, is that, you know, from a consumer standpoint, they look at you as a brand. They don't really differentiate, especially the generation of consumers that are coming up today in this world of, you know, sort of hyper connectivity. We are always on our phones and tablets and whatnot. For us, we don't really differentiate, because even in the simple process of buying a product, I could start my research online. I could compare products. I could go into a physical store to actually physically look at them. Maybe I'm trying to buy a TV. I look at TV A right next to the TV B, and then I might actually come back home because I think that there is a better deal online, and then make the purchase online, and then say, you know what, I bought the TV, but I forgot to add the HDMI cable to that order. So let me call the contact center and then modify the order, so to speak, and then also say, hey, by the way, this seems like a very expensive TV. Do you also have installation services that you can provide, right? So in just that one simple process of buying a TV, the consumer could sort of weave in and out of multiple channels, and a lot of those things are going to be done online, whether we like it or not. So my simple submission at the end of the day is that I think the apprehensions are, I understand them, but I think that's not a good enough reason for you to stay away from online. You can definitely take baby steps. You don't have to go the whole hog and say, well, I'm going to become the Amazon of tomorrow. It's not going to happen. And I think people realize that, but you can definitely take a lot of baby steps and do it in a phased manner. And like I was suggesting earlier, you can just start out by putting out a catalog. People go to the web to look up where your store is located. How long are they open, right? Maybe call the contact center to say, hey, is this kind of a product available in your store? So there are a lot of things that people can do, and once you get them started, and once you start building this community of followers online, then I think that's going to eventually lead to you seeing a lot of commerce transactions as well.
Parimal, in your, I know that when we started the discussions earlier, you had come in with a statement because we were discussing about pricing online and offline and various discounts, etc. And then you had something interesting to say about how you have to look at this whole business in a slightly different form. Maybe you may want to tell us your view of how people should be, especially for those who are already offline retailers, successful retailers. With your experience of being, you said you are a back engine for many retailers globally. What is your advice? One. Second thing is, do you see still an advantage for online players to beat you online because of the fact that many of them have taken this price game to a different level? So I think that's something that always comes up. I think for many offline retailers, it is that the online players are already beating us down on price. So do they really have a chance?
Hey, thanks for the question. I thought I put my foot in my mouth when I said that, because who am I to give advice to these guys who know their business orders of magnitude better than I do? So, Mr. Vianney, but it was a passionate comment, and one that was born out of my sort of very strong belief that technology can play a huge role in enabling new business models, in helping innovate how any business, online, offline, or traditional, from back in the day, can today use technology to its advantage, to better connect with its customers, to communicate with its customers, to provide new value propositions to its customers, and so on. So that's really where my comment came from. I don't know about advice. I can probably just say this is what I feel. And I'll repeat what I said in the afternoon earlier, which is, look, I think any online business today, offline business today, has a huge advantage in terms of the assets they have in India, right? First, huge brand presence, retail points of presence, distribution channel, inventory, the entire systems. And the way I would view it is that rather than trying to be all of a sudden, and to your point, an online store, let's try to figure out how can we extend, enhance the services that we provide to our customers as an online store. And some of us talked about those things, right? Why can't I check products online? Why can't I perhaps even order online for delivery later on? Perhaps do returns. Why can't I schedule delivery if I'm a grocery store? And I'll take it out even to my kirana wala, right? Why can't I submit a list to the kirana wala so that he can pack it and deliver later on? Why can't I use technology to better integrate with my offline presence and extend it to my consumers to help, with newer ways of engaging with them, right? In-store commerce could be a huge thing, right? With the proliferation of smartphones, and I know it's still a small population, but let's say as that expands, and I have no doubt that that will expand, right? Businesses like yours that have a huge retail presence and others can use technology to your advantage to provide more information to your customers about what's in store. Obviously, provide more location-based services, more real-time services with regard to kind of, at lunch, where might I want to go, or at 6 p.m. in the evening when I'm looking to make a decision about which club to go to, or how can those offline businesses use technology to drive customers? I think the possibilities are endless. So my core comment, my sort of the meta point is, rather than trying to be like something else and chasing something else, I would just say, let's take stock of the assets that we have and then leverage technology to enable those ideas, those business models. And that's really, the role that we play at Akamai, which is, we're the ones behind the scenes helping these business models sort of, come about, right? And we love that position. Right? So I'll kind of get off my soapbox here, but that's what my, firm belief is, right?
So would you recommend an offline retailer to have a different pricing for online?
Look, that's a business decision that I wouldn't get into.
Okay.
Right? That's strictly based on their strategies.
So let's ask the guys around this.
Yeah, well,
because each one of them would have a view on this. And
yeah,
how would you look at it?
These guys should know better.
Let me try and venture at least a framework to define an answer.
And this is the time when everybody gets to talk. Because this is the most debated topic earlier, and we've had the presence of, we got some offline thing also done before. So you get to see this online.
The way I view the answer to this question is, look, there are three key things which define the value proposition of shopping online. One is value, which is a better price. You ask any consumer, he's probably going to tell you that I shop online because I get a better deal, I get a better offer, I get a better discount. That is the reality of the consumer as it exists today. The second one is selection, is variety. Finding that specific design that you don't find in offline retail, you potentially find it on online, therefore people come because you know what, you can compare a lot more designs than you can in offline retail. And the third is one of convenience. And convenience can be defined in multiple ways. The first one is, for an offline retailer, being online gives you access to markets where you're not physically present in, right? You could be present in 50 towns, you could be present in 100 towns, but there are more than 3,000, I think, in eBay over the last year or year before. I mean, we had people from more than 3,300 cities, towns, and villages who shopped on eBay, right? And that number would be growing at a very, very rapid clip. You would not expect to have a presence in so many cities if you're an offline retailer. And that's one aspect of convenience. And there are various other aspects of convenience, and some of that got referred to here, which is buying online, picking up in store, or researching offline, shopping online, and so on. So the reality is, today, a significant driver of consumer behavior when it comes to shopping online is price, is value. But over a period of time, some of the consumers will start maturing and start appreciating variety. Now, I leave it to the retailers, I leave it to the brands to decide whether you want to only have, let's say, off-season inventory at a discount online, and let's say your new in-season inventory, you have it at full price. That's a strategy that the brand needs to follow, that the retailer needs to follow, but accept the fact that the consumer today is expecting a great deal online. I mean, start tasting success there, and then the business model can start evolving. It's way too early to start saying yes or no basis price, would be my point of view.
Yeah, but for a retailer, he has to take a decision today when he goes online. So Shiva, for you, because of the fact that you've got a very established brand, you've got a network, you've got a whole lot of dealer, distributor, MBO, various networks set up, what would be your strategy to go online? Would you give a price differentiator at all? Or would you say, I'm not going to change on the price? Customers can get all the other paraphernalia that's available, as the other gentlemen here have said, about the various other assets that online brings in, but you may not want to give them the price advantage.
Here, I would like to look at myself as a customer. Won't I feel cheated if I get the same price at a lesser price on online, and when I walk into a store, it is slightly expensive? So the strategy, what we would like to look at is, probably there will be exclusive products for online. Quality remains the same, but these products are not available anywhere. That's where the pricing differentiation or ability for us to price it differently would come. See, this is more from a consumer feeling cheated, and also for us, still 90-95% of business is an offline business, right? While we would not like to take a call that basically we will not enter online because it may cannibalize X, Y, Z, right? So we approach it from this angle that, what is the strategy which would enable me to price separately, price differently for the consumers. At the same time, consumer does not feel that, he's cheated.
Therefore, are you saying that in order to make sure that your presence on online is being relevant, you would try and create a different pricing strategy? You talked about creating a separate line.
No, that's what I'm saying. So the strategy for us would be that if we have to create a different pricing strategy.
So as on date, as you are setting
As on date, the way we are looking at is, we are looking at taking the same pricing across on the online side.
Which I'll also extend one more question. Because you've got this whole distributor network, you've got people already set up, do they feel cheated the minute you go online? Because you're suddenly talking to the consumer directly, whereas in the other cases you've had quite a bit of a network set up.
No, it's the same way. So we have our own EBO. We directly interact with consumers there. We also sell our brands through department stores and trade partners. Nobody feels cheated as long as, see, some markets we on our own may never be able to go. We have to partner, right? Yeah, Peter, you have a point.
Yeah, just to add to what Shiva just said, and people who follow US markets, I'm sure you're familiar with the term, showrooming, right? So showrooming is again, thanks to all the stuff that we just talked about, a consumer, just like, you and I, we can go into a physical store, we could have, we could whip out your, phablet or, smartphone or whatever, and I could, check the price of the product that's, right in front of me on the shelf, right? So, these kinds of technologies are already out there, and I'm sure a lot of them are already making their way into, Indian markets as well. So, so this sort of highly empowered consumer, as we call them, is something that a lot of retailers, worry about. A lot of retailers are losing sleep for the fact that, there's so much of information is available at the fingertips of an average consumer, if I could call him that, in the sense that as long as you're able to get onto the internet, there is a lot of, information that's available to you. So I think, from a pricing standpoint, somebody famous said that, at least in parts where Amazon really rules, if your product that you're selling has a UPC code, you better not sell it anymore, because, they're going to find it cheaper, or probably you're going to get a better service or something in terms of delivery if you order it from Amazon, right? So I think it goes back to Shiva's point about, I think pricing is one aspect of it, but I think it also has to do a lot with in terms of how unique that product is. Is that something that's available elsewhere? If it is a commodity product, then yes, why would the consumer not look at the price? Because if it's available at 10 retailers and if it's exactly the same thing, then price becomes a very important factor. But if it is not, if it is something that's unique or if it's not available elsewhere and things like that, then I think you have a little bit of leeway to play around with pricing. And then of course, then the whole offline online becomes a strategic, I think a decision that the company has to arrive at. Like he said, it could be available exclusively online for a different price. But I think at the end of the day, I think the consumer, either way, I think in my opinion has to be communicated very clearly what is it that they're buying, right? And in fact, we had this interesting sidebar conversation earlier is that now thanks to social media, people can just go online and you can do nothing about it and they can say, well, you know what, I bought this particular shoe online, they charged me, 5,000 rupees for it, but then when I went to the store, it was available for, 4,000 or whatever it is, right?
So what are you saying, just sorry,
Yeah.
Are you suggesting they should have a differential pricing for the same product online and offline, or are you saying no? I think the answer that we'd look for, from what you're saying, if it's a commodity, you have to play the price war. If it's not a commodity, everything at a particular level becomes a commodity, I guess. How would you look at it?
I think this is I think really a difficult question to sort of say it's not a yes or no answer. I think, to be honest with you.
So let's ask the retailers.
Yeah.
Two things for you. One is the pricing issue. The second thing is Shiva's talked about creating a separate line for the online customers.
Let's take a online poll. How many people have gone to buy product for full price online so far?
Somebody's already given you money for that question.
No, but how many people have actually gone online for buying full price? Can we just raise hands? How many? There's hardly anything here. No, that's not even 20%. 80% the people go for deals.
No, you have to ask the other question now. How many of you would go online if you get a cheaper product online of the same brand?
No, that would be cheating from a brand's perspective. I'd like to not agree to this. As a brand, I strongly believe that you need to be very absolutely transparent. I cannot sell on eBay because somebody has written a negative thing on eBay. Today, if something happens, immediately I get a post on my Facebook, which I've got a following of 60,000 people. Young girls, you need to understand whom are you talking to first. I think we need to be all very clear. Whom am I talking to? I'm talking to the most intelligent community of this country. They know how to communicate. They know what to do in Delhi if something happens wrong. They know where to tweet, they know where to communicate. And I tell you very strongly, like we sell almost 1,000 pairs a day on shoes of online. And the kind of response what we get if we sell one pair at a wrong price, and you have had it. We are available in 53 cities. We sell online as almost around 75 to 80 cities. So our community whom we are communicating to is a very, very intelligent community. So we have to be absolutely clear that there should be never, ever, at least I recommend that there should be ever disparity in pricing in online or offline.
Okay, so you've got an advantage of controlling the brand that you are selling because you own the brand.
No,
Let's
then
ask Vivek.
you have to better do that some way.
So now I'm going to pose a question to somebody else who doesn't necessarily own all the brands he sells, which is Vivek, because he's got an additional problem. Because he's not completely in control of the supply chain there. And how would you look at this whole thing?
See, I think, actually this question is a little premature, I believe, right now. I think one will have to offer the price and the merchandise that the customer wants on the respective channel. I think I, as one retailer, cannot dictate what's going to happen online. I mean, if some other retailer is selling online a price which is cheaper, I'll have to compete on that channel. Or else I'll have to offer, some services which I can do. I can charge a higher premium. If I can't do all that, why will a customer buy from me online? If you're selling catwalk shoes, I'm selling catwalk shoes, another online retailer is selling catwalk shoes, and if that retailer has the same amount of trust and same amount of service that we give, he is going to go there and buy. So I have to compete on that, whether it be through price, whether it through merchandise. I think it's a channel, one will have to compete it. So I think, honestly, I think these things will evolve. I think we as physical retailers will learn what one needs to do to sell online. I think pure play online retailers will have to, figure out what price they need to sell at. I think brands will also figure out whether they want to create a different merchandise or whether they want to, sell the same merchandise at the same price. So I think it's a journey, and let's see. So I think, as Mr. Asif was saying, I think if his brand stands for consistent pricing, he controls it, and there will be consistent pricing. If there is another brand which doesn't, one will have to live with that.
Some analytical support.
Okay.
So
our full price from 35% has gone down to 20% online.
So I think before we go to the audience for the question, the one a small thing about what's been your experience vis-a-vis customers, because have you really seen a different profile of customers coming online? Have you seen a different demography of customers coming online? I think that would be useful for those who have just started.
Very smart customers.
Okay.
Absolutely smart. They know what they're doing. If Asaram Baba says something wrong, they know what to do.
Okay, so they're
Very
smarter.
smart.
So how does the behavior change for them vis-a-vis your brand, and what?
No, but you need to communicate very correctly to the people. If you know your audience very well, I'm sure you cannot be Manmohan Singh.
Is your customer demographics changing? Are they?
Yeah, we are I'll just share some experience since we are very analytically based. Almost 35% of the customers come from East.
From the?
East,
Wow.
where Far East and all. That's amazing, especially in Far East. I'm very impressed. Then comes South. So there's a huge community,
new markets which was not
huge
there
community which is coming from East.
which
They are
proves
very
which is proving Murli's point of getting newer markets because of online.
Yeah, it means henceforth we need to, people are very demanding. I'm seeing that people are really very demanding. It's an amazing way of showcasing your products. Means if we all don't do it correctly now, trust me, our grandchildren will curse us one day.
Murli, for those who are doing this,
To add some color on
one second. Just to add, I'm sure you're adding something to this. One more nuance that you may need to bring about because of your experience with the company that you are in is, would you have some other thoughts on the way they should market? Because they are obviously finding new customers in the country. And would you have a different thought on how they may be able to expand that market faster or better?
I'll try and answer that by laying out two interesting consumer segments which I believe is fueling a lot of growth of online shopping in India. One is what we call Gen Y, which Asif Bhai, referred to. I mean, these folks have broadly grown up online. They've grown up with smartphones. They're online on Facebook and various other pieces of social media, on their BBM, on their WhatsApp, pretty much 24/7, right? For them, there is information available all the time at their fingertips, and therefore, the kind of behavior that Gen Y displays is very, very different from perhaps even my generation and the generations that preceded me. That's one. They may shop offline, but increasingly they're displaying a tendency to be shopping online. That's one segment. The second segment is the upwardly mobile folks, people with increasing disposable income, access to information, but no access to offline retail, which is primarily tier 2 and beyond. Now, in terms of marketing, Gen Y is really, really challenging. And let's take social media marketing, for example. Over the last couple of years, from a distance, I have rather with amusement seen the evolution of social media marketing in India. For the longest time, people said, you know what, you set up a Facebook page, you advertise on Facebook to get fans to like you and so on, and you're done. That's social media marketing. eBay tried that too. Guess what? That doesn't work. You can have a lot of fans, but unless you figure how to engage with them, these people talk a different language, right? Can we learn that language and talk that language is the first question you need to ask if you need to market to them. Just sending consistent emails. We still have an hour and a minute and 23. Sending emails every now and then is not the answer. Send them emails with relevant content that matters to them, stuff that they would engage in or share with their friends and family. I mean, add value in that conversation, and then you can market to them. You need to have their permission to talk to them. They're not going to listen to you otherwise. And the paradigm is very, very different, and we are learning the A's and B's of how to do that.
You asked a question about, from a consumer standpoint, what are the customer's expectations? What do they expect? And I think, obviously, not only is it variety and pricing and discounts and whatnot, and this might sound like a self-serving comment, but having been in the business for 10 years now, I firmly believe that as you gentlemen think about extending your online presence, especially to folks far east or in other parts of the country, think about the user experience of your websites, right? People have zero patience these days. We're working on a charter that a web page should render itself within a second or less than that, right? I'm sure all of you have zero patience for sites that don't operate fast or are not reliable, or God forbid you enter your credit card and you don't get a response back for 10 seconds. You don't know what happened to that credit card, and all sorts of scares or sort of fears come in, which will impact your business. So just think about that, because I think your website is the extension of your brand, right? If I walk into Big Bazaar versus going to a website, I want a consistent experience, right? I want it to look and feel like it, be as fast, as reliable, or whatever value propositions you associate your brand with, or if you're Four Seasons, right? Think about those things, right? And we take a lot of pride in what we do with such situations, but that's the only thing in terms of customer expectations. Zero tolerance for mediocrity when it comes to technology, and especially with things like speed and reliability and availability of sites.
We do have time for some questions, but if I can actually, before we go to the audience, if we can maybe have the Twitter questions up on the screen, and maybe the panel can answer one or two of those questions.
Okay.
So we have Vinod asking, how do you take care of poor delivery infrastructure in India? Is bringing it in-house the only answer?
Is the person here inside the room?
I don't know. I think one of the benefits of this is that they don't actually have to raise their hand and be like, it's me.
I was just thinking they could ask it to an individual person here, but any one of you can take it up.
Well, I definitely don't think that you have to do it in-house necessarily, but the infrastructure needs to exist for that. I think you've got to do to service your customer the manner you want it to be serviced. If there is someone doing that for you, great. If not, you got to do it yourself. You got to do it yourself. So I think the problem with infrastructure is that it doesn't keep pace with the growth of your own business. And if you want to grow your business at a certain speed and certain scale, and if the relevant infrastructure doesn't exist, you got to do what you got to do. So
Okay, so that's good news for the service provider if that person is sitting here. Yeah.
but at the same time, we definitely don't like doing it. So if there's someone wants to do it, we would happily give it to someone.
I just sort of have a slightly on a lighter note. When we say infrastructure, obviously there are a lot of things which come under the definition of infrastructure. Including roads and power cuts and whatnot. So where do you actually draw the line, right? Are you going to start laying roads, and are you going to fix the transmission lines? I don't think the answer is trying to do in-house. I think it may work for some folks out there in the marketplace. It may work in metros. I think there are specific cases where it may work, and I think it's just a function of a evolving, maturing market. But there are a lot of pure play logistics providers who are, I'm sure, very happy to do business with .com companies and sort of building this ecosystem. I think that's where I think we are at a stage where I think a lot of these components have to come together for the overall success of the e-commerce industry. So I think if somebody is trying to say, well, I'm going to do everything, I would probably say that's probably not the right thing to do.
And I definitely don't want everybody to build their own CDNs because we'll be out of business otherwise.
Okay, and is there one more question from Twitter before we go to the audience? Yes, we have retail stores across South, and we have a strong online presence. Do we need to keep our tag rates lower than physical stores?
I think this was answered.
Yeah, I think this was answered in.
Yeah, it was effectively answered. Some of them may want to do it differently, but many of them may not necessarily want to do it in that form. Some of them also prefer to have a different line all set up, which is not available offline, so that they can still give a differential price without the customer feeling cheated. So I take it as that's the way it came out of this session. Go to the next one.
Okay, great. So now let's go to the audience, and we've got 1, 2, 3 questions over there.
Hi. It's a question to the bulk of the people who have a very strong presence in the offline world. The cost contribution to the offline world is highly biased with regions. I mean, all of us agree that how painful it is to run a Select City Walk in the month of April and September, essentially. Do you think that this difference which is there in the real estate prices in some of the successful malls is going to get balanced because the e-commerce business is going to come up in the future?
Well, I guess as far as India is concerned, the offline retail or large format retail itself is a decade old. It's too early. Well, in US, people are seeing that trend as far as physical space rental coming down because of the online business picking up. For India, my view would be it's too early for us to answer whether there would be stabilization on retail prices, real estate prices.
Okay, thanks.
Maybe you can just pass the mic right up.
Just one correction. It is not April and September. It is all 365 days. So no. For retailers, it's 365 days now.
Hi. My question is in general to the panel, actually. Somebody just asked on Twitter that, because of the poor infrastructure, what would you do? And few of you all said that, it will be stupid to go actually building roads and stuff. But what if there could actually be a company which would go to thousands of e-commerce players and say that, invest X amount of money and I'm going to build the infrastructure for you to make sure that, your last mile delivery is done. Would there be e-commerce players interested in making sure? Because, left to the hands of government, I think we are all done with the Anna Hazare fights and everything else which is going on, because of which, the infrastructure can just be kept aside because I'm sure it's not their priority at all. But end of the day, for entrepreneurs, I think it is. Without that, there's no way forward. So how would you like to take that?
Let me take a stab at an answer. Firstly, while I didn't answer earlier, let me give my 2 cents on the usage of the term poor delivery infrastructure. Firstly, I think it's being overly harsh on courier companies in India. It's evolving. It's not yet quite where it needs to be super efficient, but it's rapidly evolving and getting better with each passing day. And I must give them credit for recognizing the opportunity that e-commerce brings to them. migrating their systems online and creating a services infrastructure with which companies like eBay and various other e-commerce companies can integrate to do real-time airway bill generation, label printing, tracking, etc., etc. They have come a long way. They have evolved. We at eBay firmly believe that it is important to partner with the large courier companies in India and leverage what they already have, provide them demand intelligence on the kind of places from where we're getting orders so they can look at their financial feasibility and expand their delivery network. We strongly believe the solution lies in partnership and not quite building this from ground up. I mean, the same thing could, let's say, extend to payment gateways, right? Payment gateways also have infrastructural challenges. There are a lot of failures, a lot of drop-offs. Would e-commerce companies build their own payment gateways? The argument doesn't end. And therefore, firmly believe the answer lies in partnership. I mean, you spoke about investment. I'm just taking it as a commercial partnership route and building the ecosystem together.
Okay. So I think for lack of time, I'm sure there are more questions, but I'd like to thank the panelists on this and hand it over to the...
All right, no, yeah, I think it really is an honor for E-Tailing India Expo to have such thought leaders and speaking and supporting this cause. So on behalf of Ashish and his team, we'd like to sincerely thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you.
Next.